Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
For the Navy, consolidating and reducing its sprawling IT networks has been a decades-long effort. But in recent years, the pace has picked up. Starting from several thousand networks, the service expects to be down to fewer than 100 by next year. Scott St. Pierre, the Navy's Director of Enterprise Networks and Cybersecurity, spoke with Federal News Network's Jared Serbu at our recent DoD Modernization Exchange.
Navy started this journey back in the late 90s when it conceived of the Navy Marine Corps intranet. Back then, we had probably 6,000 plus network environments. And I use the term environments very specifically to refer to the fact that we had business systems mixed with research, development, test, and evaluation, with tactical training ranges. So business and warfighting was all intermixed on the shore side of the house. And we realized that we needed to do differently because we were spending an awful lot of duplicate dollars there to be able to deploy and maintain and sustain these systems. By 2010, we were down to about 1,200. By 2020, we were down to about 250 environments. And today, I'm happy to report that we're at about 124. And by the end of this year, our goal is to be under 100. So we made a tremendous amount of progress. Data center consolidation that started back in 2011 helped us also drive things down. We're down to about 148 data centers now, with a target of about 123 when we're finalized. We don't know what the right number will be. It will be as we continue to deconstruct the network environments, it will be able to settle on what's the right combination of on-prem and off-prem. But we are taking advantage of what the cloud offers and moving as much of our stuff to the cloud, to mesh networks and modern capabilities as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's a great update. So rather than asking you for a discrete number, what the final number is going to be, as if there could be such a thing, there obviously can't. Talk us through some of the considerations that you use in deciding year by year, okay, this is going to be the target for the next year.
Early on, it was easy because each individual organization had their own business networks, and some of those were multifunctional constructs. Those that were business were easy to move to the Navy Marine Corps intranet. We over the course of time, it became NGEN. Now it's called NEN, the Navy Enterprise Network. But as we did that, we had to look at just how complex the network environment was, how much deconstruction was required to move things where they needed to go. Over time, we ran out of funding and didn't have enough capacity left, and so we had to solve some of those problems. And so between deconstruction, funding availability as the highs and lows of prioritization of funding goes, we continue down that path. But at the end of the day, our greatest challenge is that deconstruction so that we can figure out which workloads need to go to the cloud, which workloads need to be on-prem because of their physical presence. So a lot of our test and evaluation capabilities ashore emulate and are the exact replicas of what we have at float. Consider the Apollo 13 movie where the engineers gathered everything up that was on the spaceship and they dumped it in front of the lead engineer. And he says, this is all they've got? And the answer was yes. So our land-based test sites are physical entities that emulate everything aboard ship. So we know that those will be left at the end of the day, but we've moved a lot of things to the cloud. And as we look across our applications and our data environments, we're starting to see duplication in data sets, duplication in applications and services. So we're really turning our attention there to remove some of that duplication. We want redundancy. We want failover. We want our ability to do COOP, which is continuity of operations. So some of that will remain so as to provide us with those duplicate capabilities. Same thing with a mesh network. We want to keep our transport so as to have those multiple paths to provide diversity of path as well as the ability to route things when we lose power due to an electrical storm and the like. So
I'd like to take a couple steps back to what you were talking about a minute ago with the deconstruction piece of this. Talk us through a little bit about why that has been such a challenge and maybe like at what levels that work is happening in terms of echelon. And because I think that tells us a little bit about why this has been such a multi-year challenge to discover all of these enclaves before you can decide what to do with them.
So a lot of our stuff was in the late 60s, early 70s technology where we didn't have a lot of memory. We didn't have a lot of random access memory that would allow us to build large, complex applications and services. So we had very, very tightly coupled capabilities. The OS and the applications that we're riding on were very tightly coupled. So the deconstruction is figuring out how do we modernize the applications to be used with our modern OSs, with our modern servers and switches and things of that nature. So that deconstruction took some time. We got to open architecture in 2008 for our warfighting capabilities by putting wrappers around things. And that enabled us to at least take that first step to move from the old mil-spec hardware environments to COTS technologies. So that was a big part of it. And as we looked across all of our network environments, we found that that was more true than we realized. And so deconstructing those. And the second part of that, again, became the landing pads. Where are we going to move this to? So it wasn't until we started moving to the cloud in 2011 that we realized that we had options available to us that would allow us to literally either rewrite some of the simpler applications and move them to the cloud, or provide for the right interfaces to be able to lift and shift those capabilities to the cloud.
So going from thousands to now under 100, at least as the target, maybe talk us through some of the benefits that you've seen so far from that consolidation, from reducing that top line number.
So first and foremost, it's usability. Because our new hardware is the latest technology, we're seeing much greater speeds and ability to access applications. We aren't sitting and waiting for 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes for a computer boot up. So we're seeing near instantaneous, just like we have at home, start up and log on procedures. So it's much simpler and much improved usability for our workers. And that's important because that's one of the things that they oftentimes identify as, I'm tired of having to wait for my computer to boot up, and they go to greener pastures to go work in industry because industry typically does have the latest and greatest. Secondly, obviously, is the cost. By eliminating duplication of capabilities, we're driving down the cost. We're moving to enterprise services because, again, our ability to access quickly those thick clients is what we call them, where everybody's using the same applications, significantly improved over the late 90s, early aughts, where our compute capacity and capability wasn't quite as good as it is today. And that's everything from the server speeds to the switch speeds that allow us to readily access that, particularly the stuff that's in the clouds. So those are some of the things that we're seeing as immediate improvements. But now we shift to modern data analytics. We have the capacity now to do the big data analytics, which helps us start looking at our business data to find areas where we can become more efficient, as well as looking at anomalies in cyber detection, which allow us, again, to improve the overall capabilities to find that needle in a haystack associated with adversaries trying to attack our systems, whether they be warfighting or business systems.
That's Scott St. Pierre, the Navy's Director of Enterprise Networks and Cybersecurity. To watch his full conversation with Jared Serbu, check out Federal News Network's DoD Modernization Exchange at federalnewsnetwork.com.